Hiya! So I want to talk about this emotive music synthesizer that I was working on. I'm not sure that I really finished with it, but I ran out of time and funding, so I just want to document what I have now, and then maybe at some point in the future I'll come back and work on it some more. So the backstory to this is that I had become interested in the work that was done in this paper. So basically what they're doing here is trying to take short stories and turn them into radio plays. So if you have a piece of text, they've written algorithms that will search through and try to figure out how many characters there are and which characters are speaking which lines of text. And they also try to figure out what are the genders of the different characters and maybe approximately what age they are and what their voice should sound like. And once they've done all that, then they can use speech synthesizers to go through and actually speak all of the text. So they're starting with text and ending with audio. And what I wanted to do was expand this to include music. So given a line of text or a paragraph of text, can I write an algorithm that will generate maybe some ambient background music that would be appropriate to be played in the background while the text is being spoken? And can I do it in such a way that the music that's generated actually highlights the meaning of the text in some way? And so I ended up landing on this idea of emotion as being the common thing that links text to music. Or at least I'm calling it emotion, maybe more properly it's affect. But what I'm interested in doing is using emotional labels. So if I can apply a label like happiness to a piece of text, then maybe I can also generate music that in some way embodies that same label, happiness. And so one very common way of representing emotion, at least in computer science, is with this two-dimensional model of valence and arousal. So on this axis is valence. Valence is sometimes referred to as pleasantness, and positive valence refers to pleasant emotions, and negative valence refers to displeasurable emotions. And then on this axis is arousal, and arousal sort of refers to how energetic you are. So very high arousal means you have lots of energy, and low arousal is very sort of calm and tranquil. And you can explore this a little bit. If I put this purple dot somewhere, say I put it over here with low valence and high arousal, then I can click on this button that says nearest words, and it'll give me the 10 nearest words to that point. So here I've gotten abduction, enraged, killing, terrorism, bloodbath. Okay, these are all words that have extremely, they're very displeasurable words, and they're all very high energy. Okay, and by contrast, I could move this purple dot into this other quadrant and get the nearest words. And I get tranquility, natural, smooth, dream, relaxing, peaceful. Okay, these are all words that are pleasant and very calm. And the reason that I know what valence and arousal apply to different words is because I have this paper. And basically what they've done here is just ask a large number of people to rate a large number of words in terms of their valence and arousal. And they've compiled all of those scores into this massive dictionary. And I have that dictionary. So in my web page over here, I can just look up words in the dictionary. So as an interesting side note, I also plotted the entire corpus. And so this is what that looks like. This is all 20,000 words in the whole corpus. And what's interesting about this is that even though the corpus as a whole has very near to zero mean valence and zero mean arousal, there's still a very clear skew to the data along this principal axis. So even though there are more words overall in this quadrant as compared to this quadrant, the words in this quadrant tend to be more extreme in their ratings than in this quadrant. And so it's interesting to think about why that might be the case. But in any event, of course, what I want to be able to do is just enter some text here and get the valence and arousal score for that text. And so what I have here is an Aesop fable, and I can just pick a sentence out of this story. The sentence says, "As the sun rose, the fish left the shallow water near the shore and swam below into the cool depths towards the middle." And I can paste that sentence here and plot the whole sentence. So this plots each word in the sentence, and then the purple dot here moves to the mean valence and arousal score of those words. And just looking at this, that appears to be about what you would expect. Okay, it's somewhat calm and somewhat pleasant. And so I'll take this down here as being the valence and arousal score that represents this sentence as a whole. So of course now what I want to do is synthesize some music that has this particular valence and arousal score. But how do I know what features the music should have? What should the music sound like? What should it be like? Well, I found this paper, and in this paper they link emotion to musical features. So they got a bunch of short clips of music, and they had one group of people just rate the valence and arousal for each clip of music. And then they had a second group of people who were musical experts. They had those experts rate the musical features present in each clip. So for example, on a 7-point Likert scale, rate how fast is this piece of music, where 1 would be very slow music and 7 would be very fast music. Or rate how dissonant this piece of music is, or how rhythmic the clip of music is. And so using the results from these two different groups of people, they were able to link this emotional valence arousal to these different musical features. And the result that they have is depicted really nicely in these graphs in their paper. So for instance, looking at this graph here, the graph is the same plot of valence and arousal that I have in my web page over here. And what these lines are telling you is how fast the tempo should be for a particular valence and arousal. So if you have this much valence and this much arousal, then your tempo score, or your tempo should be 5 on a 7-point Likert scale. Okay, and the next plot over here is the same thing, but for rhythm, how rhythmic is the piece of music. And so they've done this for, I think, 10 or 11 different musical features. And so what I've done in my web page, which you haven't seen thus far, is I've made a slider for each of the musical features in the paper. And I've linked these sliders to the valence and arousal plot. So as I move this purple dot around, all the sliders automatically move to the correct location for the selected valence and arousal. Okay. So now I'd like to play some of this music for you that I've come up with and try to show you what these different sliders actually do to the music. So I'm using these synthesized cello sounds. And the tempo slider, I think, is clear what that does. Okay, rhythm and accentuation are two features that I haven't yet implemented, so this might be something I have to do in the future. Rhythmic articulation. I've interpreted this to mean sort of how staccato the music is. One of the things that I really like about this 7-point Likert scale model is that it's actually really open to interpretation. So what does it mean to have 3 amount of articulation? Well, as a composer, I'm free to make some decisions about what that should mean. So to me, this sounds very articulate, and this sounds much more inarticulate in a way. Melodic direction. So here you'll have descending scales. And on the other side, you'll have predominantly ascending scales. Okay, pitch level, I think it's pretty clear just how high or low is the pitch overall. So you hear a lot of very high notes, and on this side you should hear a lot of low notes. Okay, and then the pitch range. Over here, all the notes are within maybe an octave or so. And when I move this slider over here, all the notes will be spread out over several octaves. Mode, in the paper they just used the major and minor mode, but here I've implemented all of the 7 medieval church modes, or neo-medieval church modes. So with the most sharp mode here, that's Lydian, and then Ionian, Mixolydian, Dorian, Aeolian, Phrygian, and Locrian, which is the most sort of flat of the modes. And you'll hear also in the background I've included some drone notes, and those drones help sort of distinguish what the different modes are. So this has a very minor sound to it, and over here you have a much more bright major sort of sound. Okay. Harmonic complexity. So down here, harmonic complexity, I'm just choosing notes at random, so there's not a really obvious way for me to try to construct chords. So I've sort of interpreted this to mean more voices or fewer voices. So when I put the slider all the way here, you just hear the drone plus 1 cello sound. I'm going to play with the tempo a little bit. Okay, to me this is not a very harmonically complex sound. And as I move the slider over, I get more voices, so more cellos playing. And you end up naturally building more complicated sorts of chords. A little glitch in the audio there. And then consonants is another one that I just never had time to implement. Okay, sorry, I got distracted there for a minute. But what I was saying is that I'm reasonably happy with the way this sounds. Just moving the sliders around, it makes a reasonably wide variety of musical textures. And so now I should be able to move this dot around and generate music with different emotional qualities. And so in some ways, I think this is kind of convincing, but in other ways, maybe not so much. You know, if I put in sad, does this really sound sad? Maybe not quite. You know, if it were me, I might actually choose a little bit of slower tempo, you know, and a lower harmonic complexity. You know, to me, this sounds a lot sadder already. And maybe a more minor mode, and maybe a lower pitch level. And what about happy? Maybe, kind of. So I think part of the problem here is that some of the sliders here never end up, like the full range of the slider never ends up getting used. So as I move this purple dot around, you can see like pitch level pretty much just stays in the middle there, no matter where I move the purple dot to. So this pitch level slider pretty much always just stays in the same place. So I think one thing that might help would be just to rescale the ranges so that that little bit in the middle of that slider then gets stretched out, you know, to fill the whole slider. And that might help make a greater distinction between the different emotional values. But so that's where I am at the moment. That's what I've done. That's what I have. And so, yeah, of course, I'm thinking that then somebody could paste in text out of a story in here, maybe one sentence at a time or one paragraph at a time. You know, you could play the music. You might manipulate it a little bit manually. It doesn't have to be a fully automated process. And then I've included this offline render function, which I have in some of my other tools, where you can just enter a file name and say how many seconds of it you want, and your browser will just download that to your downloads folder. And so you could make clips like this for each paragraph of music, or each paragraph of text, say, and then assemble them in post. And maybe later, the whole process could be fully automated. And so as a final note, at some point, this whole algorithm really should be evaluated, like maybe with human subjects. And the good news about that is that this plot that I've made almost suggests its own method of evaluations built into it. So I think what you would do is you might randomly select a valence and arousal value. You wouldn't tell the participants which values you selected, but you would just synthesize some music with those values. And then you would ask the participants to just describe the music. Okay. And so suppose that you're synthesizing music with values over here, and people are describing it with words like happy and glad. then you know there's some sort of a problem because these words lie very far away from what you thought you were synthesizing. And conversely, if people are using words that are close to what you think you're synthesizing, then you know that you're doing pretty well. So yeah, at some point, once we've worked out some of the other things that I've mentioned, I think this would be a really nice study to do. Yeah, so I think that's all I have for now. So I think I'm just going to leave it there, and maybe I'll come back and work on it at some point in the future. But yeah, that's it. So bye, and ha det bra, vi ses senere!